We are taught to be still and to show up in a certain way, and that comes with control and that comes with force, and it can be incredibly uncomfortable when our body wants to open and expand. I had to be okay with that discomfort as I prioritized myself. Does that mean I was abandoning them all the time? No, but it may have meant that dinner had to wait, or it may have meant that I wasn't able to go to be at every single event or tournament or whatever it is. Maybe I only made part of it instead of all of it. And I had to really ask myself what I wanted. And that was okay for me. I decided it was okay for me.
Hello! In this podcast, I have conversations with women who are building their businesses in their own way. We speak about the paths they've walked, the moments of meeting their edges, and the shifts that allowed and followed them to integrate feminine energetics into their work. These are honest conversations about building, leading, and creating from the inside out, meant to inspire women to unmute their voices and build in ways that are uniquely their own. Today I am speaking with Leah. It's a pleasure to have you here. And normally I have a short bio introduction, but I really want to speak about how we met. So Leah and I met a year ago at a retreat in Sedona. And that's the first time that we met live. And Leah was the breathwork facilitator. And I just want to start by saying that I never had experienced that kind of breath work that you led us through. And also you said something, you expressed something to me that completely shaped my understanding of, in that moment, breath work. And that led to a lot of adjusting on how I do practices, because what you shared with me was honor the body first. And the reason you shared that with me is because there was so much moving in my body that I couldn't stand still. But I had learned that I needed to stay lying and I needed to stay in a certain position in order for the breath work to be optimal. And in that moment, when you shared with me, honor the body first, I started moving, and I think I even got up at one point and moving and just really going with the wave of my breath and allowing the wave of the breath to go, my body to go with the waves of the breath. And the experiences that I had were so far more bigger. I don't have the words. And so this is how Leah and I met. And from that day on, Leah lives on another continent, different time zone. So I know you offer breathwork online sometimes, and I'm so disappointed that it's so far away in middle of the night for me because it was an amazing experience. So thank you so much for being here, Leah.
Thank
It's a
you, Ghislaine.
pleasure.
I'm so excited. So excited to see your face. Yes.
Yay! So I would love to hear from you. Who are you and what do you do? You're a breathwork
Okay.
facilitator,
Okay.
but you do so much more. Yes.
Thank you. And thank you for sharing that as well. I would love to speak to that for just a moment. I don't remember those words coming out of my mouth, but it definitely sounds it sounds right.
Yeah.
And the thing that's really important about that is we are taught to be still and to show up in a certain way, and that comes with control and that comes with force, and it can be incredibly uncomfortable when our body wants to open and expand. And so it's really, really interesting how that came up. It's perfect. I was recently at a retreat where I was witnessing people do breath work, many of them for the first time. And
Mhm.
something that I witness often in people who do breath work for the first time is a closedness in
Yes.
their body.
Hmm.
Because, like you said, we often show up with this idea that we have to be a certain way. We have to be really still because that means we're being really good and we're following the instructions.
Hmm.
But also, what it means is it gives us something to hide behind. So when we hold our hands, just real close together and everything's just tight and uniform, it gives us something to hide behind so that we don't necessarily have to feel what's right there in our body that's coming up to be felt and to be sensed. So I love that you brought that up. And it's something that I talk about a lot. I teach yoga. I have a yoga studio that I own with a very good friend of mine in Jacksonville Beach, Florida. And there at the studio, I teach yoga and I teach breath work. And it's something that I often see and something that we speak about often is allowing your body to express in the way that it needs to, giving yourself space to feel the poses or the breath or the emotion or whatever's coming up in your body. Give yourself the space to feel it how you need to feel it. It's like we're done with rigidity. We don't need it. We don't need everything to be a fixed or controlled or forced way. Our body is so wise. It
Mhm.
knows what it needs. It knows how to feel it if we just allow ourselves to surrender to it, which also brings us back to the energetics around femininity. Um,
Yes.
so that is partially what I do. I also teach breath work online. I help leading retreats. I lead my own retreats and do some private coaching and things like that. So I feel
Yes.
like I get to flow around all of these different spaces and meet the most amazing people, which is what led me here to you.
So, what would you say is the core of what you bring to the world with all the different things that you do?
I love that question because so many people assume that it's just the breath work or just the yoga. And it's not. It's the energetics behind it.
Mhm.
It's the authenticity. It's who we get to be when we start digging down deep and figure out for ourselves what matters to us and what lives in our heart.
Yeah.
It's the energy underneath these types of conversations. I announced at this retreat, I was like, it might be the first time I said something like this out loud. I'm like, I want to know like all your stuff, like not your stuff. I don't care about your stuff, but I want to know like the deepest part of you that you never share, right? Like
Mhm.
that's the part of you that I want to know. And I think that these modalities have been really great in allowing me to connect to people from that space. That's what I bring to the world is the safety and vulnerability and authenticity and in discovering ourselves so that we can
Yeah.
begin to relate on that
Mhm.
level and then create the world that we want from the fullest parts of ourselves.
Isn't it amazing how by going into the deep, allowing ourselves to trust more and to step outside of the boxes that we've been given, like you spoke about it, this is the box of breathwork, and we hide. And isn't
Yes.
it amazing that when we allow ourselves to step outside of these boxes, which is really scary and could dysregulate the nervous system, we end up so deeply connected to ourselves that we feel safe in any kind of situations.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's the hero's journey. We leave the unfamiliar, we leave the ordinary life, and we step across a threshold where we haven't been taught to live in this way. We haven't been taught to operate in this way, and we start to explore the depths of our own soul.
Yes.
And and you're right, that's when we begin to build the familiarity with our own wisdom
Hmm.
and with our own innate way of being and with the energy that is the life force that lights all of us up. And yeah, once you tune into that, you realize, wait a second, there's there's nothing outside of me that I actually need. There's nothing outside of me that will actually save me. It's like it's been me all along. Like, Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz. It's been there all
Exactly.
along. Yeah.
Yeah. It's me all along. Absolutely beautiful. So
Mhm.
what you shared about what you about your work, this is you now. Has it always been this way?
No.
Tell us, tell us. We want to hear the old and the bad stuff. Well, bad is never bad, but the old stuff, the old stuff.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. So like most of us, I grew up and I was conditioned and listening to all of the rules that society could place on my beingness and my heart. Um, so I was born really premature, and that made me always really little. I mean, it's also who I am, but I always felt behind, I should say. I always felt behind in my growth and in my development. And And so there was definitely a feeling of unworthiness, and whether it came from that, who knows where
Mhm.
all of the places that our beliefs about ourselves come from. But so definitely a strong feeling of unworthiness that began to show itself for sure, through my teenage years, as happens for most of us. Excuse me. And and so, going into adulthood, I figured out that I had to work hard. I
Mhm.
had to try harder, and I had to pretend to be who I wasn't. If I pretended to be smart, if I read a lot of books and pretended to be smart and to try to take on these ideas for myself, it seemed like I could kind of get through that way.
Mhm.
And, if I repeated the things that people say to me, I'll never forget being in church one time. And I didn't go to church a lot. I went with my friends because I wanted to be loved and I wanted to be accepted. So if their
Mhm.
family went to church, I was going to go to church. And so I went with them, and I remember just being in Sunday school one day and taking it all in about, the missionaries and all the good work they were doing. And one of the questions in Sunday school that day was, well, what do you want to do when you grow up? Well, I'm no dummy. Like, I heard the conversation with, duh, I want to be a missionary because you guys were telling me about how loved the missionaries are. So,
Yeah,
what else am I going to say? Of course, I'm going to say that the thing that will give me the most acceptance in this moment. And
exactly.
that is how I rolled.
Mhm.
I've always been really good at reading people, and I've always been really good at reading situations. So I've always been really good at telling people what I think they want to hear so that I could be accepted. And that was the way that I protected myself, and being who I thought that people wanted me to be.
Yes.
So I did love school though. I loved learning.
Mhm.
I loved education. And I was drawn towards anthropology. So I have an
Mhm.
undergraduate degree in anthropology. And the reason I love that was because I love learning about different types of people and what makes people different and what, the impact of our culture and biology and the way that we do things, just how all of those things impact who we are and what makes us different. From there, I took it a step further and I went to learn about public health and epidemiology. So I earned a master's degree in public health and I
Mhm.
earned a doctorate degree in epidemiology because then I could really start to get down and dirty about what is it that makes people different, what makes some people sick and some people stay healthy.
Mhm.
And so those kinds of ideas were always really interesting to me. I wanted to know the source of our how we were, how we are, how we are healthy, how we are not healthy, all of that. I just want to know how it all worked. And so I've been drawn to different, sciences and things like that to learn more about that. And anyways, I I worked hard, and my doctorate degree came actually from a medical school, the University of Maryland Medical School. So I
Mhm.
felt surrounded by this culture that it was nothing rare to work 70 hours a week for many of these people that I was in school with and the doctors that I was surrounded by. And that's how you proved yourself. You worked harder, you worked more, and nothing mattered as much as your work. So
Mhm.
I slowly began to trade whatever I had left in terms of my self-worth for work.
Yeah.
Like I was just gonna work harder and try to prove myself. And a few years in, that was great. And a few years in, I learned a lot. I met amazing people. I got to work on incredible research studies. I started to learn a lot about the brain and neuroplasticity and how we can shift even in our older age, because at that time that was kind of a new reckoning for us. We can shift the way our brain works and how we
Mhm.
believe and how we think and how our body works, that it's all very malleable. And so, let's see, about, I don't know, a few years in, my husband decided he wanted to make a big move. He wanted to leave the area where we were at and open his first business. And so I said, okay, we'll do that. We'll do that. And I'm just going to work harder. I'm going to travel back and forth from our new place in Florida back and forth to Baltimore to finish up my work there. And then in a couple years, we'll move back to Baltimore so that I can take on what I thought would be a faculty position there. So I did. I worked harder, but I also began to have children. I traveled
Mm-hmm.
back and forth. I had my first son, and continued on with my work. And then I got pregnant with my daughter 2.5 years later. And it was about the time we were supposed to really be considering moving back to Baltimore.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, being called back to interview for a faculty position with my mentors and all of the people that I had worked with. And I think I was supposed to leave the next day or something. And I was about 8 months pregnant with my daughter and just emotional as could be. I felt terrible. Like I could feel the weight of everything starting to come down on me.
Mm-hmm.
And I I started to fall apart, and I had to be really honest and truthful with whether or not a move back to Baltimore was going to be the right step for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I was afraid to admit that it wasn't, because I had this new family that I was growing. I had been trying really hard to fit the mold of somebody who would be this wonderful, PhD researcher in this field, and realized that it actually didn't matter that much to me. Like, it was important, maybe, but what also had become clear was that we are throwing gobs and gobs and gobs of research funding dollars into research that is never actually shifting. I don't want to say
Mm-hmm.
never. Of course, there's some good research coming out, but most of the research is really just for the people who are doing it and
Mm-hmm.
for their publication and for them to further their own career. So it started to not sit well with me that most of what was happening was never actually going to shift the quality of people's lives.
Mm-hmm.
And
Which is the reason why you went on
went
that.
into it to begin with.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I had to be really honest with myself, and I canceled my trip and I didn't go back.
Mm.
And that was a really hard reckoning for me. It was also around the time that I had my daughter, and I think I had some depression. I'll not think, I know I had a good deal of depression, and I spiraled for then I would say the next 8 to 10 years. I had another child. I have three children, two boys and a girl. I had another child a few years later, but I spiraled because I didn't know my path anymore. I didn't know my
Mm-hmm.
way anymore. And I tried to make a life for myself where I was. I lectured at a university nearby my house,
Mm-hmm.
and started just trying to fit into certain places, but none of it was right. None of it worked. And then all of this depression, all of this unease began to show itself in my body. I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's. I was diagnosed with tumors on my parathyroid glands and overproduction of kidney or of calcium, which led to kidney stones.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I ended up having terrible, terrible back pain and slip discs and things like that. But I just kept trying harder
Mm-hmm.
to outrun my body and outrun my sadness and outrun my depression and anxiety. And ultimately, on my 40th birthday, I ended up in emergency surgery for my back because the disc was so severely herniated that I had lost all of the uh, feeling and motion movement down my leg and my right foot. And so
So
that's
your
where I
body
spent.
was really
My body shut down.
shouting and
Yeah,
like, we
yeah,
can't do this anymore. Yeah.
absolutely. My body shut down, and I couldn't go anymore. I couldn't pretend
Mm.
anymore that it was all okay, which I had gotten really good at doing. And so yeah, I had to stop. And then a big aha for me was maybe a month or so later when I was in my surgeon's office for my review. He was checking on me to see how I was doing. I burst into tears and I realized
Mm.
I didn't know how bad I was hurting. I didn't know how much pain I was in for years and years and years. And then that started to feel like, wow, I really turned my back on myself.
Mm-hmm.
I really I really resisted hearing the truth. And that was hard for me to come around to. And so it was a lot of healing. It was about a year of rehabilitation.
Yeah.
And around the end of that year, I started hearing a voice in my head, my
Mm-hmm.
intuition, spirit, that said yoga. And I was like, no, nope, nope, I'm not going to do it. And one of my friends had said, well, now that you've had surgery, you're just going to have to do yoga like the rest of us. I'm like, nope, I'm not going to do it. Because that meant putting down my fight, right? Like
Mhm.
that meant giving up my what I perceived as my strength.
And opening to something different. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes. And I listened eventually because I know the voice and I know when it's time to listen.
Mm-hmm.
And it took me to a yoga class, which was knocked my socks off, blew my mind, which was just so good. My body felt amazing. And it was taught by this incredible instructor. Her name is Erin, and I loved her to death. And she is now my business partner.
What a beautiful story. I love that. I love
Mhm.
that.
Mhm.
I don't know if if you know this. Yoga is also my first yoga lesson was the thing that really allowed me to land in my body and to feel and to think, oh, my body feels amazing. So I love that you are sharing this and that you have this as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a big shift for me. And,
What a
you know,
journey.
so what's that?
What a journey.
Yeah, what a journey for real. And that
Yeah.
was just the beginning. I mean, there's another 10 years post that that has brought me
Yeah.
to where I'm at. But that is really where the shift started and the journey of my regulation began.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, as you say, the journey took longer. It didn't just shift in one day. But I am going to ask you to jump to the now
Yeah.
and share with me what can you say is the biggest difference in how you don't want to say do life because that's involved in everything. I think it starts with how you do life, but then mainly how you bring yourself towards the world. I heard you share that you, when you were young, that you learned to position yourself in a certain way. Is that something that you stopped doing or that you do in a different way? Yeah. Can you
No,
share
that
that
had to
with us?
stop. Anything related to strategy
Mm-hmm.
has really been let go. Anything related to um, really anything related to force or control
Mm-hmm.
from the outside in has been completely let go. Everything that I do now is from the inside out. Everything that I do now is focused on checking in with my heart, checking in with what matters in this moment, checking into how this really feels in my body. I do a
Mm-hmm.
lot of muscle testing now so that I can notice, well, how does this really sit with me? Is this a yes or is this a no for me?
Mm-hmm.
Um, a lot of intuition training, a lot of really just getting quiet and listening to how something feels for me and what guidance I receive. A
Yeah.
lot of dream work. I get a lot of information from my dreams, a lot of
Mm-hmm.
guidance that come from my dreams. Everything I do is rooted in my intuition work, is rooted in trusting myself, is rooted in asking what's in alignment with me, what feels right in my heart. Everything comes from there now.
So I guess that there's what you were expressing is here. It's the capacity to receive the guidance, to understand what is happening in your system, to notice the dreams, to understand also how dreams are communicating with you, because that's from the one person to the other one very different. And here's I'm going to say the old Leah.
Mhm.
What's the bridge for you?
Mm. The bridge for me was the regulation of my nervous system.
Okay,
And
nice.
that came
Mhm.
through yoga, it came through breath work, it came through
Mhm.
meditation, it, it's really building that muscle from,
Exactly.
moving from a sympathetic state where most of us spend a lot of time,
Hmm.
trying to get things done, trying to be a certain way, moving into regulation so that we can trust ourselves and so that everything else can expand. It's not just our body and our immune function and our cardiovascular function and all of the different systems within our body that is reliant on the regulation of our nervous system. It's our brain, it's our brainwave states, our capacity to see and to shift our perspective, to have an expanded awareness. I mean, good luck trying to have a really good idea when you're feeling anxious. And, good luck trying to feel inspired when you're in a survival state. It's never going to happen.
No.
So, just really being able to trust myself and be in this state of regulation so that I can invite in the perceptivity and inspiration that guides me.
And I love that you brought up the fact that you trained your system because so many, and I've been there, I wished for the quick fix. I've done the meditations for 1 week and then I was like, why is this not done yet? Duh, duh, duh. And also, we live in a world where so many healers and teachers do promise the quick fix.
Mhm.
And that's all marketing strategy. I'm not saying they are doing bad things, but it's just a marketing strategy.
Right.
And I love that you are bringing up the fact that there's a need for our systems to be trained for the new. Because when you share, I'm able to understand my dreams or to listen to my dreams or to allow my intuition to tell me, is this a yes or is this a no? I know there are many, many women listening to us that wish that they could have this. And I'm joining hands with you in sharing because this is also what I believe in. There is a, I'm going to say need, even though that's not a, so many people don't like the word need, but there is a need for this connection that you want to create with your system.
Mhm.
It needs to learn to trust you because you've been doing
Mhm.
things your whole life in a certain way. And just because you decided in your mind on Monday morning, on the blue of November, uh, you just, and then your system should be listening to you, but that's not how your system works. You've been
Mhm.
overriding your systems years and years in, years out, and there is a need to rewire and to reestablish a relationship of trust.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And this is where I do most of my work. This is, I think, kind of like my primary focus, especially lately, is the recognition that most of us don't even really know how to regulate our system. And
Hmm.
so it is building trust within ourselves. It's building a schedule that is actually around and prioritizing our regulation as opposed to building a schedule around getting it all done.
Hmm.
And there is a way to do both. I know that can feel really overwhelming for people who are out there that are still strategizing, that are still pushing. There's a way to get it all done, but we've got to prioritize that state, that regulatory state. So, there's a lot of things, for example, that I do. I do a 24-hour fast once a week. And that is a day that's really important and crucial to me to have very little obligation in terms of having to be somewhere or do things. I reserve that day more for creativity and inspiration because when I'm in a fasted state and my body's not distracted with digestion and things like that, not only is it healing itself from whatever needs healing at that time, but it's also giving me the opportunity to just slow down, go inward, to be still, to notice. Do I spend the whole day in meditation? No, but I do some different things. I do some journaling. I do some meditation. I may do some breath work. I may just sit outside and look at nature. And
Hmm.
those are the times when I really feel like I get the inspiration and the inspired ideas. So it doesn't have to be all at once. Of course, we have to train our systems, but it's an investment that we'll never be sorry that we make because once we have that wisdom, once we have access to that connection, it's something that we can tap into all of the time, all
Hmm.
of the time. But we have to keep it at the center. We have to keep it at the forefront. And it really, 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 nervous system regulation is, I think, the crucial piece that most of us are missing.
Yeah, and I think it's very interesting that you speak about. I want to just hook on one of the things that you said,
Yeah.
24 hours fast, because I was in my mind. I was like, oh, I wanna ask Leah about cold bath and fasting for women,
Yes. Yes.
because we are so used in. I mean, all those things and a lot of research that are being done also in the medical world is all based on men. I think it's just in 1993 that they started to do research in, how some things, medication, that kind of things, how women react to them, to those, and how men react to those. That's just recently that they
Absolutely.
started doing this
Mhm.
differentiation. And we hear, so the Wim Hof method, cold plunge, and breath work, those are all things that there were a lot of men leading in that field, and also fasting. I know for women, especially, I mean, we have a cycle of 28 days. A man has a cycle of 24 hours. So, I mean, for a man, it's a
Mhm.
different rhythm. Yes, for
Mhm.
us, I know
Absolutely.
a lot of young women that fast 36 hours
Mhm.
daily, doing one meal a day. And in my mind, it doesn't work, but I can't put my hand on it, and I'm not doing the research. And I just wanted to ask you, what is your do you have any experience with that? Is that anything that you
I mean, I think it depends on the outcomes that you're looking for. For
yeah.
me, it's about connectivity to myself. For
Mm-hmm.
me, it's not so much about, trying to lose weight or look a
Mm,
certain way.
exactly.
It's about connectivity to myself and giving my entire system a break.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, resting, giving myself a break from digestion and whatever my body is normally up to. It's just about giving it a break and tapping into my connection to myself. Um, I wouldn't be able to give you the definitive on it because I think it does depend on how we relate to ourselves and our body. You
That's
would
true.
need to, tap in, ask yourself how this feels for me. Maybe it starts with intermittent fasting. I am a big fan of fasting. I have had very good results with it, especially connecting to myself deeply.
Mm-hmm.
That is what I really enjoy doing a fast for. I think I've done as much as a 5-day fast before, and I don't think I should go any further than that in my body. And I don't think I should do a 5-day fast very often. But it does give me deep, deep access and insight to the way that I feel and the connection to my body. Sometimes it doesn't work for people. So maybe you do other things, and the same as the cold plunge. Again, like I think most of the information around cold plunge is meant for men. And I have read and heard that, maybe it's not as beneficial for women. In my opinion, a cold plunge is beneficial for disruption. It's a really good
Change of
way.
pattern. Yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm.
It's a really good way to take us out of our norm, to disrupt a state of being.
Mm-hmm.
And how much fat it burns or whether or not it's good for our system, I don't know. Does it feel good in your body? That's how I ask myself all of the time. Sometimes I really want it, sometimes I want nothing to do with it. And I think just once you start to get clear on when you're working from a pattern of avoidance
Mm-hmm.
versus when you're working from a pattern of intuition and deep insight, then you know.
Thank you for bringing that up, because this is something I wanted to add. I think it's very important to really hear what you're saying. You've been connecting to your body, to your system, to your intuition, and restoring your nervous system for many, many years. And I think that there are many women that are thriving at fasting or cold plunges, but from a place where they are in override. And so they just convince themselves, this is good for me, this is good for me, this is good for me. Because I am sometimes all of a sudden, out of this blue Monday that I was talking about, my body goes, take a cold shower.
Yeah.
And then there's also nothing in my system that dreads it. I just go. And sometimes I'm like, oh, maybe I should. My mind says, maybe I should do a cold shower today. My whole system goes, no. And when my system, when I feel in my system, okay, cold shower, I'm like 2, 3, 1, as cold as it can be. And I'm just
Yes.
standing in the cold shower and I'm just receiving. And I notice my body after that just really like being,
Yes. Sometimes it feels really, really good and you crave
exactly.
that
Yeah.
awakening in your body.
Yeah. But I think
Hmm.
that it's a very important differentiation from which connection with your body are you doing it? Is there a connection or is there no connection? So,
That's exactly it. And, cold plunge and fasting and virtually everything we do can be just different ways of overriding our nervous system.
yes, exactly.
So we may just be introducing dysregulation in another way.
Hmm.
And that's not healthy. That's not what we're trying to do. So, is it nice to have these tools to disrupt our system? Yes. When we're caught in a spiral, when we're caught in whether it's a spiral of thought or belief or whatever it
Hmm.
is, and we can see it, but we don't necessarily know how to pull ourselves out of it. Those tools for disruption can be very, very beneficial.
Yeah,
And if they're used all of the time in rigidity, it can lead to dysregulation just like anything else can.
exactly, because then it's control.
Then it's force. Yes.
Exactly. Yeah,
Then it's force.
yeah.
So it's really just being very keen on understanding what is leading us
Hmm.
into our choices.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I heard you share about what you do differently now in your life versus what you did in the past. You take the time every week, 24 hours for yourself, based, including fasting, but also really, I hear you also sharing you take the time for yourself. You listen more to your intuition and you make decisions in a different way. Is it a yes, is it or no?
Mhm.
How does that work in daily life? Because I'm sure I want to know. It's something
Yeah.
that I'm also, doing, but sometimes I notice that, and you have a family, you have children, you have a husband. So how does take us in into your,
Well, I'll start with boundaries. Mine have gotten
mhm,
very, very strong
yeah.
and not always to the liking of the people around me, and that's part of this journey and part of our our own growth is understanding where am I saying yes, but I actually mean no. And that can be a little bit hard to come to, especially for the people that we love. But if we can allow ourselves to embrace those boundaries for ourselves, I can tell you the people who love you and the people who support you will stick around and they will actually start, in my experience, doing that for you and with you. I
Mhm.
mean, in hindsight, I would pull myself away to meditate for hours. My husband, my children, they all were like, "Oh, there she goes again," and kind of just like, "You're never available. You never do this, you never do that." And I got to hear about that from them. I got to hear about how they felt like I was pulling away from them or maybe just not as accessible as I used to be. And I had to be okay with that. I had to be okay with that discomfort as I prioritized myself. Does that mean I was abandoning them all the time? No. But it may have meant that dinner had to wait, or it may have meant that, I wasn't able to go to be at every single event
Mhm.
or tournament or whatever it is. Maybe I only made part of it instead of all of it. And I had to really ask myself what I wanted, and that was okay for me. I decided it was okay for me because, in the end, what I actually get to share with my family and with anyone around me who's actually paying attention to what I'm doing is that I'm prioritizing myself. And I hope that you do too. I hope that
Mhm.
my children do it. I hope that my husband does it. I hope that every single person around me recognizes that they are worthy and important enough to prioritize themselves every single day
Yeah.
and that everything else can wait. Because when you show up, the regulated version of yourself, you have so much more to give.
Mhm.
So I got really strong with boundaries. I got really good at saying no. Did I lose a lot of friends? Yeah, I did. Do I
Mm.
still go out and hang out with the same group of friends that I did years ago when I used to drink alcohol and do this and do that? No, I don't. But you know what I have is a community around me that prioritizes themselves in a very similar way. And I have deeper conversations and I have a deeper connection. And that is actually what matters to me more.
Yeah, I
Mhm.
love this. And I guess also when your nervous system is more, when you're more in touch with your regulated nervous system, is what I wanted to say, then it's also easier to hold that space for others that find it difficult that you hold your boundaries.
Oh,
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah. One
For
big
sure.
shift for me was when I understood that I was creating my boundaries out of self love and not because I wanted to keep something or someone out.
Huge.
Huge shift for me that was like bloom and yeah, was
Yeah, and I think you brought up something really important in self-love. You know what I've realized is so much of this journey is about self-love and self-forgiveness because for you to be worthy of those boundaries, your worth has to come from somewhere. And it's in my opinion, it is all about the recognition of self-love and forgiveness of yourself. Anytime that you thought that you weren't worthy, anytime that you thought that the boundary would hurt others and therefore hurt you, or you wouldn't be accepted, or whatever it was, it's really the boundaries are about self-love and self-forgiveness.
yeah, I love this.
Beautiful. And
Yes,
very, very powerful.
yeah, yes. And the truth is, if everybody would take care of themselves from self-love and not from reaction but from action towards themselves, then the world would be perfect. I'm an utopist, so yeah,
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because when you're serving yourself in that way, that's what your source and the wisdom and the strength to serve the world. You want to serve everyone in the same way. And once you accept that love for yourself, you want everyone else to be able to accept it for themselves as well.
yes, in service to yourself.
Yes.
I love this.
Yes.
I love this. Actually, Leah, I feel that this conversation is nice and round and complete. Is there anything else that you would like to add before we say goodbyes?
Well, I just want to thank you, Ghislaine, because you are one of the biggest lights in my life. And every time I see your face and every time I hear your voice, it just makes me happy and I can feel myself expand. So thank you for being that. Thank you for being an amplifier for love and an amplifier for grace and for the feminine energy that you're speaking life into for women all over the world. So thank you for that.
Thank you so much. It was lovely having you, and I will invite you another time to continue this
I
conversation.
I would love that. Thank you.
Bye bye.